Wanted to let you guys know a little bit about my training and what I have been doing in order to try and increase my lung capacity while also training my CO2 tolerance and overall just trying to improve my breath hold. Many people will tell you that when you first get into breath holding, if you just start going after personal best after personal best, yeah, you will continue to see improvements up until a point, but then you'll just totally shock your nervous system and you'll associate breath holding with a negative connotation because it's really painful, especially if you keep going for personal bests, and you'll just burn yourself out. So there are a few things you need to know about breath holding. Number one is you are much better at breath holding in the morning without eating any food or exercising. That's when your heart rate's going to be the lowest coming out of sleep. So I do the majority of my training in the morning around 9:30 a.m. And then in the afternoon, if I feel like I want to get a little bit more work in, then I will do an additional amount of training. But that is just fluff. Like, that's just icing on the cake, and I really enjoy it because there's no pressure to get anything done. So, like I said, I'm going to break it out into two parts. The first part is trying to increase your lung capacity, and a lot of people think this can't be done, which from what I've read, it's kind of a yes and a no. It's a no because your lungs, to a certain point, especially at this age, I'm 26, I probably cannot expand the actual lung tissue. So if you think of your lung like a balloon, at some point, you can't stretch it anymore or the balloon's gonna pop, right? With that being said though, I think that your lungs certainly have a limitation due to your rib cage, and I don't think your lungs are actually at the point of popping when you take a deep breath. I think there's a lot more room to give, and that's been proven with a technique called packing, where elite freedivers will literally pack extra air into their lungs that they cannot inhale through normal breath, which stretches their lungs. And it is dangerous to a point because you do put an increased pressure on your lungs, and that can result in lungs popping, especially if you have a sharp contraction. But this goes to show that you can actually increase your lung capacity manually and forcefully. So I do think that, yes, while we do have a predetermined limit of the amount of the amount of space our lungs can expand to, I think that there are two determining factors that actively restrain that, and that is your rib cage and your diaphragm strength. So if you think about your diaphragm, it's a muscle that sucks your lungs down on the inhale and then pushes your lungs up on the exhale. Most people have a very weak diaphragm just due to the way that we breathe normally today. More shallow breathing, which they don't even engage your diaphragm. So if you don't work a muscle, obviously it's not going to be strong. So that's the first part of my training. I've been using a inspiratory training device. I will be giving a review on this later. It's called Expand-A-Lung, and I do about 15 to 30 minutes of training a day. And essentially what I'm doing is I'm trying to train my diaphragm. So it's resistive, or it offers resistance when you breathe. The same philosophy as if you're going to go to the gym and lift weights, right? You're adding resistance to your muscles. Your muscles will adapt over time by growing and increasing in size and also getting stronger. So that's how I've been training my diaphragm. I want to strengthen my diaphragm, especially on the inhale, because if my diaphragm can go lower, in theory, it will be able to suck my lungs down more and get the most capacity out of my lungs that I possibly can. Additionally, you can also train your rib cage. So you have inspiratory muscles that are the muscles in between your ribs that help expand your rib cage when you try to take a breath. And you can also do various stretches to try to stretch those muscles out to increase size. So there's two ways that I think you can go about increasing your lung capacity. Number one is having a much stronger diaphragm to literally suck the lungs down, and also increasing the rib muscles and making the rib cage more flexible and wider as a whole. And if you think about a balloon, right? So here I have a balloon. If these are my lungs, I can expand, let's say, this much this way and this much, downward, right? But if you have a really strong diaphragm and you get it pretty stretched out, of course, you'll be able to stretch less this way because there's already tension being applied on the lower part of your lungs. But that, I think, will lead to an overall better way to get total capacity because you won't need to expand so much horizontally because you already have the tension vertically. So it's just a way of overall expanding your lungs by pulling down and out. So that's what I've been doing in terms of lung capacity training, which is obviously you can do various things to improve your ability to regulate oxygen in your body and improve your CO2 tolerance. But when it comes to pure performance, the bigger the lungs you have, the better. So that's been a lot of my training. Otherwise, I've been focusing a lot on tables and box breathing. So every morning for 20 minutes, I'll go outside and I'll do a modified box breathing set where I will do 12 seconds of inhale, which is difficult because you have to have a very slow diaphragm movement, which is just getting that mind to muscle connection to actually get to 12 seconds. Most people could only get to 6 seconds, followed by a 12-second hold, then a 12-second exhale, and then 24-second hold again, which is where I've been practicing trying to resist those contractions. I do that 20 minutes every morning. Then I will come upstairs into my room and I will do about 30 minutes to 45 minutes of training, different tables. So I'm very new to this and I'm getting into it. And I actually have a really helpful mentor, Static Apnea blog, who's been helping me along with the tables and teaching me, some philosophy behind breath holding. So I'm trying to add more volume into my training, but one table I did this morning, for example, was 6 rounds of a 5-minute breath hold, followed by 2.5 minutes of rest. I finally got my freediving nose clip, so I wore that today, which was great. I have to get used to having a nose clip on my nose, because that's how I'm going to have to do it in competition. So I did that table today. I did a table yesterday of a minute hold followed by 5 seconds of rest, and I can only exhale and inhale once on that 5-second rest. I did that for 60 rounds, an hour, which was a different sort of difficulty because it was very much monotonous and very mentally challenging, right? You're 20 rounds in and it's exhausting and you're just a third of the way through. So that's a different round of training. Otherwise, I'll also do more extreme, shorter CO2 tables like a 1.5 minute hold on a forced exhale followed by a minute of rest. And then depending on my days, I might go for, try to push my upper limits. I'm still figuring out. I don't want to push myself so hard that I shock my central nervous system and, add a bunch of barriers to my training. But yesterday I did a 650 hold, certainly challenging. I'm not going to say it wasn't, but I didn't redline it. My oxygen probably only got down into the low 70s. And so I definitely have a lot more room to give, but I'm not looking to do a personal best, like I said, every day. Probably about once a week, I might go towards the upper limit of my capability in training. So hopefully next week, next Monday or Tuesday, I might go for a 7-minute hold, like 7:02, just to break that barrier mentally. Because obviously right now, 7 minutes is a barrier for me. Like when I get into the 6-minute realm, I'm struggling and not knowing. I don't want to be checking the clock and I have the beeper going off every minute. So between 6 to 7 minutes is very much no man's land. Whereas yesterday I almost got through, right? I got to 650. If I would have just waited 10 more seconds, I would have been there. So yeah, that's been my training. Also, I'm doing a lot of cardio. I swam in college. I was a Division I swimmer. And for the last 5 years, I've just been weightlifting. I haven't done cardio at all. I'm trying to get my resting heart rate down. It's currently at 51 beats my resting heart rate at night on average, but my heart will go down to as low as 44 beats a minute, which is pretty good. But I want to get my resting heart rate easily into the high to mid 40s. And that will help just when I'm doing my breath holding. The less your heart is pumping, the less energy it's using, the more oxygen you have to your brain. At the end of the day, your brain is king. You want as much oxygen, rich blood in your brain as possible, because you're trying to push yourself to the limit, and the limit is blacking out. And you black out when you lose, when you don't have enough oxygen in your brain. Your body shuts down. So the more oxygenated blood I can have in my brain, the better. So cardio, I'll probably do cardio about 4 times a week, 4 to 5. Different zones, heart rate zones, sometimes zone 2, zone 3, and then about once a week or twice a week I'll go into zone 4 and zone 5. According to my Whoop, realistically I'm probably not actually hitting zone 4 and zone 5, because your Whoop, it might be overestimating my heartbeat, or it might be underestimating my total max heart rate. But yeah, that's what I've been doing. It's been going great. Like I said, I'm 2 weeks into training and I'm already up to 650. I have no experience or background in freediving. And to be honest, I'm not really interested in the freediving component. Maybe one day I'll get there, but freediving is a whole different animal. You got to learn how to equalize the pressure in your lungs. Also, the further you go down, the further you're getting away from your oxygen source. It could be very dangerous, very risky. Whereas static apnea, if I'm floating on the surface of a pool and I black out, somebody could pull me out. Or likewise, I'm going to get into dynamic apnea, and I think I would be really good there because I was a breaststroker. That was my forte. So I'm very efficient and good at the movement. If you think about dynamic apnea, you're basically doing breaststroke pullouts underwater. I think I can go for that U.S. national record. It's 159 meters. But otherwise, yeah, I'm training towards the 8:30-ish record, the U.S. national record. And for those of you who don't know, there's a difference between oxygen-assisted breath holding and just regular breath holding. So all those people who think David Blaine has a record of 17 minutes is it's not cheating, it's just a totally different thing. He inhaled pure oxygen for 30 minutes. If I did that right now, I could get close to that record. It just totally improves your capability, like at least doubles it. So I'm going for just normal breathing breath holding, which is what everyone would assume is typical breath holding. But yeah, that's all I have right now. That's a little insight into my training. I'll keep you guys posted, and I'll do some recordings of maybe me in training a little bit if you guys want to see where my contractions start. Today, during my 6 rounds of 5 minutes, the contractions started around 3:45 to 4 minutes, which I want to push to 5 minutes before I go for the record, which is going to take some time. That's just CO2 training. So yeah. Looking forward to continuing to share this journey with you. And if you guys have any questions, leave it in the comment section down below and I'll answer them. Thank you.